Boom, 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 everybody. Happy Saturday to you. I hope you are having a great Saturday and an amazing weekend so far. My name is Don Terrell, and I want to welcome you to another great episode of The Color of Motion, where I like to say, hey, stories come in all shades, and I highlight people of color and diverse backgrounds in the industry of motion graphics, animation, visual effects, cartoons, and comics. This space that, hey, after six, 6 seasons and 250 plus episodes, you should know by now that I love, love, love. You know the drill. Hop into the comments, say, hey, where you tuning in from? So I can give you the shout out that you so richly deserve while I check to see that we are streaming on all the platforms that we need to be streaming on. Again, I want to thank you for giving me a little bit of your time this afternoon. We are here every Saturday afternoon, live 3 p.m. Central Standard Time, live to the YouTube channel, LinkedIn, the Facebook uh, group for the show, and the website for the show. And again, like I said, I appreciate you giving me a little bit of your time every Saturday afternoon. I know you don't have to, but I appreciate my loyal viewers there. Again, I always encourage everybody though to hop on over to the YouTube channel, get plugged in, subscribe, hit the bell notification where you're tuning in from, so that you can get notified when the show goes live and when great content goes up on the channel. Really looking to level up the channel last year. That saw its biggest growth last year. So I'm really looking to add on to that for sure. So hopping on over there and being a part of the community definitely will help a lot for sure. We're also, you can now find us on some of the audio channels as well. You can find us on Spotify. We're on iHeartRadio Music, Amazon Music, and a couple of other audio platforms. You can definitely check us out there if you're just a audio type person. We definitely don't want to leave you out for sure, but you can get some great color of motion goodness from there. I also said this year that I was really gonna, not push, but really promote, just, supporting the channel. We definitely can't. I definitely can't do this, without your support. It goes a long way. Working on, our Patreon page right now. But right now, I just got a, buy me a coffee page, which is kind of the same thing. You can buy me a coffee, and I love coffee. So buymeacoffee.com/Don Terrell. Donate. Again, that helps me to continue to bring, great content to you as much as possible. Another big shout out, obviously, for our sponsor to today's show, DG Graphics. They do all the graphics, animations, overlays for this show. And we're working on some new scenes. So super looking forward to unveiling those. But if you're a business or a brand that's looking to really level up your brand content and create some engaging content, then you definitely want to reach out to them for sure. I think we're rocking and rolling. We're rocking and rolling on all the other platforms. I want to make sure. Definitely, if you are having issues, we have been having issues with Facebook for some reason, which I'm working on that. And definitely got some kind of exciting plans. Probably in second quarter, I'll unveil that. But as far as Instagram, super excited about, there's been some updates with the software that I'm using, Ecamm, that now is going to allow me to stream as well simultaneously live to Instagram vertically. So I haven't played around. It's in beta, and I haven't played around with the totally yet. So looking to really kind of start that in, again, second quarter. So I'm excited about that. That's the one reason I haven't kind of pushed the Instagram channel. There is an Instagram channel for the show. I've always wanted to go live, but as you can see, I normally stream 16:9 widescreen. So that's always been kind of the output thing. And I've always posted on there. Uh, Manel, Charlotte, North Carolina is here. Awesome. Charlotte, North Carolina in the house. I appreciate you tuning in, Vanell. And I hope and make sure this isn't the last time for sure. But I hope you enjoyed the show. I'm super looking forward to today's show and today's guest for sure. Let me get this off here. Yeah, I think I got pretty much all the other housekeeping stuff done. What do you say? And I think we are rocking and rolling on. Yeah, we are. Yeah, we are good. So, like I said, I am super excited about this next episode. Season 6 has been on fire for sure, especially this first quarter. And the rest of the season is no exception for sure. Today's episode, I've been looking forward to. We connected kind of like early last year. Connected and we're looking forward to getting them on the show. He's more kind of in the production side of it, which I like getting more as opposed to just straight animator or modeler or something like that. Uh, I like getting more kind of the production showrunner, those type of people on because it really does give a more fuller view of the industry and things you can do and what's going on. So super, super, super excited about that. And without further ado, I think we can get this party started right. Hey. Rock and roll. All right. We're back. We are back. We're back and ready to get this off the ground for sure. Like I said, I'm super excited about my next guest. He's got a vast resume for sure. And I just took a portion. I'm just reading a portion of it. He's worked for some amazing companies, so I'm definitely looking forward to sitting down, really diving into his journey, his background, and just his thoughts on just the industry as it is today. My next guest is a children's media consultant, creative executive, and artist based in Los Angeles. Originally from Tulsa, Oklahoma, he's lived across the USA and as far away as Japan before beginning his career in animation. He grew up with a love for drawing comic books, manga, and anime. His early fascination and passion for mentorship and education led him to teach English in Japan upon college graduation. Immersion in the home culture of anime solidified his desire to pursue animation professionally. Beginning as an intern at Nickelodeon Animation, he's worked on series such as The Loud House, Big Nate, Family Guy, which I kind of like Family Guy, The Fairly Odd Parents, and Star Trek Prodigy. His career has taken him to such studios as Nickelodeon, Fox Television, DreamWorks Animations, and more. Most recently, he served as the EIC on the Emmy Award-winning series The Loud House and Emmy and GLAAD Award-winning Fairly Odd Parents: A New Wish. Everybody, please help me welcome our very special guest and friend, Mr. Neil Wade.
Uh,
Mr. Neil.
you make me sound so fun.
Like I said, you have an extensive resume, and like I said, super excited to sit down and talk. As I mentioned earlier, we connected earlier last year, and I love what you're doing, what you're trying to do, and how you're trying to promote the industry, and super appreciative of you coming on and being a part of the Color of Motion family and sharing your knowledge along with my audience and others.
Thank you. It's
Oh,
yeah, no, thank you. I mean, hearing the introduction, yeah, we're very much aligned on what we're trying to do out here, and just I love the work you're doing. I love the show. Yeah, so thank you for having me.
no, no, thank you, thank you. I always, kind of like to, start, from your bio. You were into comics and manga early on in your career, but what was it specifically about animation that kind of drew you in? Everybody has their kind of thing that draws them
Uh,
into it and their entry point into it. Was there a specific animation or thing that really kind of lit the fire for you?
I would say Akira, which I saw when I was probably about 12 years old. I
Yeah.
mean, and I
You
think that
watched. You tried.
for a
Well, let me ask you: did it absorb with you, or was that one of the ones you had to watch a couple of times before you really kind of got the meaning behind the things that they were saying?
it definitely had to watch several times, but even in that first time, I tell a story of how number one, when I was, into anime and manga, it was very, very not cool, especially in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So, I had an older brother who found a place called Pizza Video, which is
Mhm.
exactly what it sounds like. They had
Pizza.
pizza and they rented videos. And my brother's a black skater in Tulsa, Oklahoma in the '90s, so
Oh
that's a whole
wow.
story unto itself.
Yeah.
But he would just kind of discover places, right? I know you're
you
laughing because I know
you guys are
you
you
know how
guys
it
are an
was.
anomaly.
Yes. Oh yeah. Like again, another show altogether unto itself. But he would come home with these bootlegged anime videos. Um, and Akira wasn't the first one, but that was the first one where it was just the epicness and
Yeah.
the bigness of the story really stuck with me. And just the concepts, even there's a scene where the police are trying to put down a protest and they're using these lasers, and in it, it was very scientific in that, the lasers, you saw the beam kind of pass through the people, and there were a couple seconds before they all kind of exploded in all this blood. And like that was a scene that really stuck with me as just how you could like the subtle, the little signals and messages, and the kind of really subtle storytelling you can do
Yeah.
with animation.
Yeah.
Um, I describe it the way one of my mentors pointed out to me. With animation, you get to take the viewer's eyeballs and put them exactly where you want them to,
Yeah.
and they see exactly what you want them to see. So even though I didn't have the words for it, that element of the storytelling, I think that's something that animation does in a very unique way. And that was my first inkling of like being compelled by this craft, this technique, this genre
Yeah.
that anime in particular is.
Yeah.
So yeah, that turning point was definitely Akira when I was about 12.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's definitely a staple on my video shelf there, Akira,
Yeah.
as a DVD to watch. I watch it numerous times for sure. I'm curious though, because what you do as far as
Mhm.
just creative development, were you
Yes.
thinking then your entry point was going to be as an animator, or were you thinking, or did you see, did you have an artistic skill that you said, okay, I'm going to be an animator and that type of thing, or a modeler, or whatever it is, or
I
was it
tell
that?
people my first love has always been comics and manga. And so around that time, what seemed realistic to me, like being an animator, animation, that wasn't quite a realistic career to me. I just didn't conceptualize that. I was determined to be a comic book artist. And, if you would ask me that time, I tell everybody I was going to go to the Joe Kubert School
Oh
of
man.
comic art. And
Ah, man,
uh,
I actually
I was,
went. I actually toured there because I did apply
oh,
there and
wow.
get. Yeah, I did get accepted there. I just didn't want. That's another story too. I just wound up
Okay.
not going, but I did. I did go there and tour, and thought about that was one of the schools I was choosing to go to. You know.
Okay. Yeah, no, I that was my plan and that was my goal. And like again, I would have told you that all day. And then
Oh wow.
around junior year in high school, my dad sat me down and was like, I'm not gonna pay for you to go to school and draw. Draw superheroes. And so But and so the compromise, I actually studied, my bachelor's is actually in architecture. And at the
Mm,
time in my head, I was like, okay, it's drawing, it's a profession, parents will be happy. And that's kind of where I was for my college days. Um,
yeah.
it was still actually, I got into my senior year of architecture and I recognized I was doing okay. I was making decent grades, but I was in a review. I remember looking kind of down the line and seeing my classmates work, and I was like, they all love doing this, and I don't love doing this.
Yeah.
And so I kind of had my little quarter life crisis, and
Epiphany moment there. This isn't the past. And I'm the same way because, like I said,
yes,
CAD and architecture, while I love it, was just a little too technical of like,
Mhm.
exact type of animation that I kind of like to get into, but I appreciated it,
yes.
you know.
I'm so grateful for that entire education. I had a great time. I had dinner with a couple of a couple of my classmates last night.
Yeah.
So um, I am very grateful for what I got out of that education.
Yeah.
But that was probably the first moment where I was like, I made a decision for myself, where I was like, I'm not doing this for my parents. I'm not doing this for anyone else. What is it I want to do?
Yeah.
And coming out of that review, I remember having a very kind of frantic, chaotic conversation with a friend of mine who was a grad student in architecture school, and he happened to be Japanese. And so I was like, I don't know I'm not going to do this, but what do I do now? I've wasted so much money and time. And he was like, you should go teach English in Japan since you love anime so much. And I was like, tell me more. And he kind of talked me through, like, he'd had this American teacher. So I looked into it and found the JET program, which is the Japanese exchange teaching program.
Yeah. I've heard
Um,
of it. Yeah. I've heard of it.
yeah. And listen, I thought I had no chance getting into this thing. I knew there was me and there were 6 Japanese majors who were who were all applying from my school. And I was like, there's no way they're going to choose me over these other folks. And so I applied to that kind of just like for peace of mind. But I was going to go on the Peace Corps to Haiti that year. And that was kind of like what I thought my plan would be.
Yeah.
Um, and, you know, I actually was accepted to the JET program. And when that happened, I was like, I'm doing that. I was like, okay, I'm not squandering this chance. So ended up taking off after graduation to Japan. And that was the turning point. That was when I was in Japan. Samurai Champloo was coming out, and let's see, in my second year while I was there. And there was an entire like cultural blitz
Yeah.
of, the designs were everywhere. This was why am I drawing a blank on the director? But he is just coming off Cowboy Bebop, so like he was like the Spielberg of Japan at the time, and everyone was
Yeah.
talking about it. Like just being in that, seeing the energy around it, seeing the design work, seeing it applied in all these various spaces, I was like, this is going to be it. And it was actually the movie Mind Game. If you ever seen that one, I went and saw that movie, and I walked out, and I said to my friend, I was like, I don't know how, but I got to do that. I don't know how I'm gonna do it, but I'm gonna learn how to do that. And that was when I was like, I'm going to be an animator. So it really did take a little bit of time, but I did get there, and it was absolutely like, yeah, I remember vividly walking out and making that decision, being so proud to
Yeah.
make the decision for myself.
Yeah. Well, how do you feel? I mean, obviously, your parents initially didn't have a kind of, taste for it or thing for it, but when you did make that decision, one, how did they react when you said you were going to make that change, and then two, how long after it did they say, okay, I think you made the right decision in what you were doing?
Yes. So my parents, have always been supportive, but I've always kind of been, of my brothers, I've always been like kind of the weirdo a little bit. And so they're used to me kind of making these snap kind of impulsive decisions. I think
Yeah.
that, even going to Japan, they were like, we thought you were going to Haiti, but they're like, okay, fine, go to Japan. We got you. We support you.
Yeah.
Um, when I came back, was like, I'm going to be an animator. They were like, okay, sure. Still supportive,
Yeah.
but there's a lot, my father was a doctor, and I remember, my first few years when I moved out to LA after Japan, and for those first 4 years, my dad was like, I just come back and be a nursing assistant, and yeah,
Well,
he's like, I was like,
it
I
sounds
can,
like. Have you ever seen oh man, what is it? Uh, I'm gonna get you, sucker. I think
Yeah.
no,
Oh,
Hollywood Shuffle. Hollywood Shuffle, where the grandmother said, "There's always work at the post office."
that was my dad. There's always working at the hospital. He's like, I always got a spot at the hospital for you. I even worked in his office for one summer and learned very quickly I am not good in hospitals. So, um, but it was actually, let's see, it was when I got the Family Guy internship. I'm sorry, the
Mm,
Nickelodeon internship.
yeah.
That was when, and he actually came out to visit me.
Hmm.
He been out several times, but when he came out to visit and saw that I was working and saw me doing okay, he said to me at one point, he's like, all right, son, you're gonna be all right. Like it became real to him when
Yeah.
I finally got that job. But yeah, there were a
When they see you can
lot of
make some money, yeah, they say, "Oh,
yeah,
okay, people get
oh
paid for
yeah,
this." Okay.
yeah. No, he's like, he's like, we're helping you out sometimes. He's like, when you gonna stop asking? So, so yeah,
Well, I mean, you were over obviously in Japan, in the
yes.
center of anime and manga, central. One, what was kind of the biggest thing you kind of picked up from your time there?
Mm,
Just with Japanese kind of perspective on their anime, and then how we look
yeah.
at anime and how big how anime is in this space over here.
Yeah. What I realized, my takeaway was that we get such a small slice of, well, at the time I would say, because now it's very different. I think there's a lot of things that are like date and
Yeah,
time that we get. But at the time, I realized we were getting such a small slice of what that industry had to offer. And when I was there, I realized there's a much more expansive it was more than just big eyes and pink hair.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
There was there were a lot more there was a lot more experimentation and a lot more style and variation within the anime world than what we were getting at the time.
yeah,
Um, and I would say the same thing about manga. And also, once I was there and in the culture, it breathed that there was an extra. I feel like even now there's an extra layer I pick up when I'm
yeah.
watching anime, just because I do understand some of the cultural underpinnings of what might seem unusual to an American audience. So that was it. I think the umbrella of that is my understanding of the various human experiences and what a human being may expect from their daily experience
Yeah,
is so different based on your cultural perspective.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
uh, yeah, I think that is kind of the larger lesson I walked away from with Japan.
Well, I'm curious. Of all the anime and especially anime, I'm not like in the manga comics so much more than anime. Have you
Yeah.
seen or watched an anime like Akira that you know
Mm,
the translation from how it is naturally over there in Japan to then how it is over
mm,
here is really minimal, if any. That they're we obviously they have to do some translation for us to understand the concept of the words that are being said. But have you watched anything that was like, okay, this is they're pretty true to how it was done and meant to be watched over in Japan?
I think the what kind of colors my answer to that is, especially since 2020, but really since the 2010s, the anime industry is much more aware and much more attentive to their global audience. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like I was when I was in Japan, it was early 2000s,
Yeah,
and at the time, my impression is that the anime industry was very much like, we are making this content for our Japanese audience. There was, we didn't, Crunchyroll was barely a thing, and
yeah,
it was still kind of bootleg VHS and some online kind of things that were making it here. It hadn't really like blown up outside of Japan in the same way it has now. So um I think what we're seeing now is, there are direct references to American pop artists that you'll see in anime now. That wasn't necessarily happening then. There
Yeah.
was a lot more talk of like it'd be a J-pop artist they were talking about.
Yeah.
So I think there's an awareness of the global audience that is being addressed in anime that wasn't at that time.
Yeah.
If that answers the question,
Yeah.
kind of.
Well, and I guess that I don't know. Maybe you can answer it or throw your answer in as far as like 2D, because obviously anime over in Japan is 2D, hand drawn, and that. But with the prevalence of 3D and the introduction of 3D, how is it received
Yes.
as far as what's being created? Do you see or feel or have heard from anime from Japan side as far as 3D?
I think what we're seeing is the anime. Anime has a very much like that 2D aesthetic.
Yeah,
What I'm noticing is a lot more hybrid 3D that we're finding kind of like
yeah,
hidden almost, kind of being sliding into the a lot of the mainstream anime. So even a One Piece, I'll catch a scene where I'm like, okay, that is, it looks, that's a cell shaded 3D
yeah,
model that they just played with,
yeah.
and I think it has led to some really interesting looks, some really cool
That's a really
new kind of
big
work.
thing. NPR, non-photorealistic realistic rendering now, especially with,
Yeah,
Spider-Verse and that, that just
yeah,
kind of fueled that thing. I want to ask you, which kind of leads me into my next question as far as today's time, today's creators, the tools
mm,
that are available now. Um, what are your kind of thoughts as far as like where creators are at this moment? Because obviously a lot's going on in the industry. People are getting laid off. People are, jobs are, getting even tighter to vie for because there's so many more
mhm.
now coming into the industry. What's kind of your, take and look on today's time?
Yes, I think there are. It's interesting because it feels like there are a lot of things happening at once, and that's always been the case, right? There's technology. There's so many factors that influence how an
Yeah,
anime and animation in general
yeah,
is rolled out. I think I think the prevalence of anime and its influence on other animation, like Western animation, is shifting things a lot. So that line and that difference isn't as hard lined. There's a lot of people talk about like American anime and things like that. I'm of the mind, and maybe a hot take. I'm of the mind that I don't consider anime unless it's made by a Japanese studio based in Japan. That is just kind of my definition.
yeah, yeah,
Um, but even that now, a lot of the anime studios that traditionally were Japanese and completely working in Japan are partnering with international studios.
yes,
So
yeah.
I am in this moment probably having to readjust that definition for
Yeah.
myself.
Well,
Um,
I think it's
mm,
like what you were saying as far as technology. I think technology, because it's ever moving forward, always
yes,
challenges and always puts that in front of
absolutely.
the artist of, okay, well, this new technology is coming out, whether you want to use it or not. How are you going to try and, implement just like, that step from 2D and, traditional here in the West to 3D type of thing. And so
Yes.
I think for me, I mean, I always say I'm excited about, even though the times are really kind of straining as far as jobs and employment and stuff. I'm excited
Yeah.
about the time now as far as the tools that are out there. We got so many great tools like Unreal, Blender. You got platforms now like Instagram, YouTube to, even if you want to fund your stuff, you got Kickstarter and all these stuff. So
Yeah.
you're in this weird position now of, as creatives, your own IP and getting your own ideas out there. So I always feel it's a great time for artists to take advantage of this moment in time. I guess I can say that because I'm a little older, so I've seen pre-internet. I've watched the technology
Mm.
kind of progress, and how it's gotten better for artists.
That's a great point. There's something I think about, and it was Ralph Bakshi at within it was there's a video of Ralph Bakshi at Comic Con within the last couple decades, I will say. But he makes a point along the lines that he's like, when I was a young animator, to make a feature, I needed, 25 people. I needed funding. We needed equipment. We needed space. We needed all these things. He's like, now you can buy a box, grab two friends, and you guys can make a feature. Why are you out here, trying to get these jobs in these giant studios that really
Yeah.
don't care about you and aren't you're working on that.
Yeah.
And I say that to say I think it talked about there's an issue of accessibility that I think that has always been somewhat of a barrier in animation.
Hmm.
We now have, if you have an iPad and Procreate Dreams for $20, you can make a feature,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
and I think we're kind of waiting for the other foot to drop on that, because I think with so many people kind of being out of work who were animation professionals,
Yeah.
I'm in a lot of conversations with people who are just like, well, we're not making money, but I love doing this. And people are discovering that their passion is still there. And so they are creating these small groups and just putting out
Yeah.
smaller
Yeah.
projects.
Yeah.
And I think we will, in like within the next year, we're going to see a lot more of these manifests. I think
Yeah.
Brianna Williams with the 3 tomes on YouTube is a great example. She, is one of the founders of Black and Animated.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was, going through a lot of time where she wasn't working, and she's like, okay, I'm gonna start my series. Kiana Khan Smith, who just did Pretty Pretty Please, I Don't Want to Be a Magical Girl Again,
Yeah.
which is gorgeous and beautiful, and it's essentially just a really well done animatic web series. So to me, I think we'll be seeing a lot more of that, of people being very creative about how to get resources to create their new work and use that technology and be very experimental, because they're not limited by studios or industry standards.
Yeah. And I think they'll realize along the way that it gives us so much more leverage, because the
Absolutely.
studios now are craving creators. And if they see you're already directly have an audience that you're engaging with,
Yes.
trust me, they're going to come knocking. They're going to come looking for you. That type
And
of thing.
I'm kind of calling that like the influencer culture that really is influencing the industry. But it was already happening when we were looking at when I was still at the studios, and they were casting, and they were already starting to look at, okay, who has an audience, who already has a following on social media, who are these people that we can build from the audience they've already set up.
Yeah.
And so I think we're seeing more creators take advantage of that themselves and understand that. And I think the studios will come knocking at some point. And, we may or may not answer, because, we might be finding that success on our own, which I'm seeing inklings of at this moment.
I think more creators will. Now, and trust me, guys, I haven't forgotten about you. We're going to get you. Let me get y'all here so you don't think I've forgotten about my audience here. Belinsky,
Right. Hey, everybody.
Belinsky, this is Japanese, so I hope this is the translation for it. Excited to hear more from Neil's perspective. Most of my family grew up with Akira or Guyver. Guyver. Quarter life crisis is an interesting way to put it. Yeah. Again, this is. I always say this. While it is a great time for it, it does require a certain type of person to create their own thing. So not everybody is cut out for that, which is why people look for a 9-to-5 job type of thing. Employment.
Well,
but I will say you do have the ability to make, on the side, extra money that can, generate revenue for you doing what you love and that you already have a skill for.
Well, I speak to that, and like one reason I say like we are having to get creative. One thing that I'm talking in a lot of my circles with is like, hey, we are a bunch of creatives, and just because we're not employed doesn't mean we stop being creative professionals. And so let's take that creativity and apply it to how we're going to be creative about getting money. How are we going to be creative about funding our projects? How we'll be creative about attaining those resources that previously were left to like an institution we worked for.
Yeah.
All right, let's apply it. I'm of the mind, if you get 20 animators in a room together and be like, today, let's make a list of every possible way we can find resources to make our film. We're going to come up with at least 20 ways to
Yeah.
make to find those resources. So to me, it's like really applying our creativity in new ways is another mark of this space that we're in right now.
Yeah.
And I think these tough times are when the most creative kind of ideas do bubble up and come out. So
Yeah.
I'm very hopeful about where things are, even though it feels very challenging right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, do you also feel, because this is kind of what I'm sensing from the creators that I'm watching, that creators now that they feel that they have to be multidisciplinary, they have to be omnipresent in the multiple things that they do, multiple revenues. They're not just doing one thing. They're not just working at a job. They may be creating courses. They may be creating, YouTube, getting revenue from YouTube, getting revenue from sponsors. There isn't just this one way now that creators are, monetizing their skill. It could be a t-shirt shop or a merchandise shop type of thing. Are you sensing that from creators that they're feeling like now they have to do a lot of different things?
Absolutely. I think that's the nature of the content creator, which is, wasn't necessarily a term everyone was talking about 8 years ago, right? So like yourself, here you are, and your background is kind of in this creative space. Well, now you have a show, and I don't know who you have editing or whatever, but you probably know a bunch more. There it is. So now all of a sudden you have editor on your bed, and you are probably taking care of your audio and visual. There's all these skills you're pulling in that traditionally were that of a crew.
Yeah.
You're now doing this from your home.
Yeah.
And so even you're a content creator, right?
Yeah.
And that's an umbrella term for so many skills.
Yeah.
And I don't know that the world has really picked up on the value of what that means quite yet. But to your point, in the very least, a lot of these artists out here who are doing this independent work, they're at least also social media marketers in addition to being artists, right? And so right there, you do have these folks having to develop these new skills to make sure we stay relevant and stay in this world that we are building.
It's funny because I had this conversation with another colleague. She was a graphic designer, but she has, and I was telling her I kind of went through the same thing as far as you work at a job for so long, 7+ years or 10+ years, you're dealing with one brand. You're not doing your own stuff on the side, and then you suddenly get out into the job force. You're laid off and get out into the job force, so you see all these skills that you felt like, wow, I didn't keep myself up on all these software skills and other skills now because I was just so myopic on this job type of thing. Is that another thing that you see or think about, that even with that full-time job, like you were saying, or working somewhere, having those outside projects to push your skills outside of what you're learning at the job or doing at the job?
Yeah, I think that's always. I'm just going back to your last question about like having being a kind of a jack of all trades and having these other skills. Most of the creators, I feel like creatives and creators I've worked with, maybe they were a storyboard artist on the show I'm working on. Most of them were like, oh yes, well, I also at home, when I go home, I'm working on a pitch, or I'm also working on this writing, or I'm working. So that already seems to have been very much the space a lot of folks were in. I think now it's become more prevalent and people being more conscious and intentional about it. But I think that's always kind of been the nature of a lot of folks in the animation field, at least.
I think,
and another thing is, okay.
No, I was going to say, all I was going to say was, I think now this time shows people that it's possible to go even further with the tools and stuff and the equipment and everything that we got. It's possible now to do it on your own more and get further than where you were doing it,
I mean, look, we have all the parts that previously were a crew needed. You can do your own distribution, you can do your own marketing, and it's a lot of work and it's a lot of time, but there's nothing stopping me. Yeah, right. And so, or I mean, again, your show is a great example. What's stopping you from you are now, you have your set, you're doing the shoots, you have your time slot, you have your programming, you have your distribution, you have your audience, all these things that you are the one man band who is now making a show. 15 years ago, that was pretty like if you had
And
said to
it's
me, "Hey, I want to have a show," yeah,
and it's reaching a worldwide audience. I can also honestly say I have a worldwide audience. So
yeah,
who can say
these
that?
things weren't
Yeah,
possible
weren't
20 years,
possible. You know,
or they were extremely, extremely difficult. There were far more barriers to that access.
yeah.
Now, one of us can do that.
Hey,
So I
I
think
can
that,
do it with my phone.
yes, exactly, exactly. So
Oh man. Everybody just joining in. We're having an amazing conversation with my man Neil Wade, creative strategist and development artist, and animator. Jump on in, join us in the conversation. It's a little large here. Let me write this down. Jim Lee put it great how anime and manga is literature based. I want to read this though. I
yes,
gotta put these up longer.
oh,
Literature
nope.
based, so more variety and protagonist plot, and not classic hero journey in common Western superhero comics. Yes, definitely.
Yes,
I think and that's why I say, it's obviously when it comes over here, it comes through this filter, you know,
yes.
type of thing,
I
and
think
it's no, go ahead.
I was going to say, and I would like to. I think that's a great observation. I'd love to add to that. There is, even in the silliest, silliest of anime, there's an emotional core and an emotional arc into our anime characters that's often pretty tragic and pretty dark.
Yeah,
But that I think is that you don't typically get in Western animation.
yeah,
So even if you look at a Full Metal Alchemist, which gets very, very dark, but but there's also these very light, silly, silly moments. But at the
yeah,
core, it is these two boys grieving their mother, and like having sacrifice, having they've been maimed, they've lost body parts,
yeah,
to in this goal of understanding alchemy.
yeah,
I mean, you go
yeah,
down the line, any of these very, these silliest of silliest, One Piece, there's still this story of his father and the One Piece that is very, very heavy emotion at
yeah,
the core of what drives these characters. And I
yeah,
think that's something that really sets anime apart, and is a reason that it really resonates, in particular with like Black and brown youth here in America.
yeah.
And so, yeah,
It has
like, I think
such
that's a great
layers.
observation.
Well, it has,
Yeah.
and like you said, it wasn't until like I tried to grasp
Uh-huh.
Akira the first time. Obviously, that
Oh,
doesn't work. But it's not
yeah.
until you watch, like you said, anime, you say, man, it's got so many layers, such
Yes.
deep layers to it. Deeper than what kind of what we get here in the Western world. We were used to like Looney Tunes, Disney, and whatnot, which only goes
Yeah.
so deep. And even then, when you look at the early ones, they were pretty racist. I have to look at those,
Mhm.
like, wow, stuff I laughed at back
Yeah.
then, and looking at them now, it's like, okay, this doesn't work. But
Right. Right.
but again, you appreciate the layer, and then when I started seeing like behind the scenes of like Hayao Miyazaki actually drawing it and seeing how anime and manga was really drawn. Then I caught Afro Samurai, and man, you just start seeing these layers of story on top of story on top of story, and nuance. And like you said, even those subtle crowd scenes have such nuance is
Yes. And I think, something else, I think that was a part of why um anime did have it took a while for it to find its way in the Western
yeah,
entertainment zeitgeist, right? Because for folks that are like, okay, where do we put this thing? Like, it's fun, it's silly, it's adventure and action, but then you have this like very tragic, dark element to it. And in America, people are like, not for kids. But
yeah,
even Dragon Ball Z, there's some darkness in, like, what's going on with Goku. But that's one of the earliest anime that I saw like on American television.
yeah.
So,
Dragon Ball
but
Z.
yes, there's, the
Well, I
balance
mean, well,
between
when you
those
think about it,
players.
there were some earlier ones that I saw, like
Yeah.
Space Blasters. It was kind of anime, style. They were like
Yes.
superheroes that had suits that when they joined, they came into this robot type of thing. Star Troop. It
Yeah.
was Space Troopers, Star Troop, something like that. Um, Hold on. I think people.
Star,
I'm gonna I'm gonna put
Star
you in the
Blazer.
full scene here. I got the DVD on one of them that I like. Sorry. You know how I like to do it, my guest.
Hey, that's all right. This is yeah, this is how we do it. I'm trying to think of what that show might be too. So
But they retitled. They often retitle these.
Mhm.
Uh,
Well, Robotech, right? Like Robotech, I think like that just hit me. Like
they
that
often
was one of
retitle
the
these like Gatchy
so,
Man. Uh,
yes.
and some of these like Hero. It was like I said, they had them on like early television, but of course, like I said, they translated. They lost a little in the translation. Obviously, they had to westernize it and change the name of it.
Right.
But
Well, I
man,
also, with a lot of those, so I remember being young, and even before, by the time I was in middle school, it was like Sailor Moon and Dragon Ball Z and Pokemon were on TV.
yeah,
But we were watching Robotech, but Robotech would come on like late night. So me and my brothers would like sneak and stay up late to watch Robotech on like public access, right? And Robotech was originally Macross, right? And so there's all these. So there were these things here that were definitely anime,
yeah.
but I wasn't necessarily picking up on the uniqueness of anime
Well, you
in
don't
compared
because it's like I said, it's not until you I think watch like something more closer to pure anime before it gets through this
yes.
kind of Western thing before you start to say, okay, it's a little deeper than what we saw on, the anime they did show us on TV. Like I said, I had no
Yes.
idea. Like I said, even that, G-Force, I thought this was it. So I saw
Right.
Akira, and then you
Yes.
start thinking, wow, it's really cerebral, the topics and the things that they're talking about in an
Yeah.
animation form. So that's what I mean as far as like, just it's always great when you see it kind of closer to its purest form because even with the words, they're going to use different words. There was another one that I like watch. It's not anime, but I liked it. Samurai. It was a samurai one. Of
Mm.
course, like I said, I loved Afro Samurai. That was just
Yes.
amazing. Amazing animation. And the guy, what I really liked about it is the artist had a true appreciation for black exploitation movies. So he had that I saw the interview of him and why he created Black Samurai, and he had a real appreciation for 70s black
Yeah.
black exploitation movies. So he created that character, and it was just Samuel Jackson, and man, it was just well done. It's just so well done.
It was, it was a great like what to me that showed a really strong understanding of not only anime and like what it is meant to be,
Yeah,
but that black exploitation. When you are able to kind of meld these like what seem to be anachronistic elements,
yeah,
it is in such a beautiful way.
yeah.
That to me just shows a very deep understanding of these genres and storytelling
Yeah.
in a way that we need more of. I think.
And I think that was before what you call them came out. What was the one Cannon Bust the creator of Cannon Busters did?
LaShawn Thomas, yes.
Yeah, he did what was the one, the Black Samurai that actually lived in his he was actual
Uh,
historical character.
Yasuke,
Yes,
the
yeah,
Yasuke,
Yasuke, yeah.
yes,
Another great one. And which I would say is probably the closest because he went over to Japan to learn, you know,
yes,
Japanese anime. So that's what I mean as far as like that's probably the closest that, like Afro Samurai and, Yatsuke that get westernized, but that
yeah.
had like a real cultural, you know, tie to anime that gave you this
Yeah.
real cultural tie to anime.
Absolutely, and I always tie it back to, I think there's a reason why anime resonates with Black audiences so
Yes,
deeply.
it
And,
is.
and so like those, I think, are great expressions of that, and expressions of that kind of cultural camaraderie, I like to say, that we have.
I have a question here by Mr. Baditsky. I'm
Okay.
curious about Neil's impression on the fact that manga is being created by more foreign artists than ever, with Japanese
Mhm.
publishers hosting more contests. Let me see. Let me get that back up. More content, more content. I'm saying, and even more foreign manga. I guess that's what he said. Or what's your thought on just which you just said you don't consider anime unless it's done by us?
And listen, semantics, right? To me, it comes down to, it's like case by case. It really comes down to, like, is there an understanding of what that essence of manga is? And
Yeah,
like, and to me, like, by that I mean there is there's an aesthetic, there's a storytelling kind of format that's not typical Western storytelling,
yeah,
that for me is what compels me about manga.
yeah,
It's not so much about like beginning, middle, end, we have to have a resolution, right?
yeah,
It is very much like how you draw, how that journey is, how you experience that journey. And for me, the manga that I love really does lean into that. So
mm,
to me, that is like, if the mangaka really understands that, and um really builds on that and uses that as an asset in the storytelling, then that is a successful manga, if that makes sense to me. If we are now in this world where, you know, when I was talking about, you have to be, it should be a Japanese creator making Japanese manga. Well, we now have these
yeah. You have African
Japanese,
creators. You have black creators making
and they're
manga
all,
and animator.
and there's enough of an influence. Like, I think the manga influence has grown to a point now that, who am I to say, like, well, you don't understand manga? When I read your piece, and there are things I read, I'm drawing a blank at the moment, but there's some stuff Saga, which is completely on the surface not manga at all, but the way that story is told, and that's I want to say Brian Michael Bendis. Oh my gosh, am I wrong? But Fiona Staples is the artist. But it's an image comic by Saga. It is completely Western, but that story feels very much like a manga when I read it, because there's so much texture and so much nuance in the beats of the story, but then they have these big, like, overarching arcs as well. To me, that feels very manga like, and if they were to roll that out on screen, I could see it being done as an anime and having that texture of an anime. It would probably need a little more like levity and lightness thrown in for me to feel right,
Yeah,
but that feels like that's at least a manga inspired storytelling style to me. So even in the course of this conversation, maybe I am shifting my definition of what constitutes manga or anime. But I think now that its influence has become so global,
yeah,
those lines are very blurred. That
yeah,
we are just seeing this storytelling coming out in different ways and expressed in
yeah,
different
yeah,
spaces than whereas before it was
yeah.
only a manga type of
Yeah,
thing.
well, I think it is because you got those creators that have a true appreciation and respect for the medium,
Yeah.
and so they go over there to say, "Hey, I want to learn how you do traditional
Yes.
anime, so I can
Yes.
fuse it with what my style is." It's not
Absolutely.
taken away from it because I respect the process of how you're doing it in the storytelling. So I think that's
Yeah.
what makes like Afro Samurai and Yasuke so
Mhm.
good is the fact that, like I said, those creators immerse themselves completely in Japanese anime.
I not to toot my own horn, but I'm working on a project myself that is actually inspired by, I grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Like the Greenwood Massacre is very
Yeah, yeah,
much a
yeah,
part in the recovery of the community, and like that's very much the world. Like I say, I grew up in the shadow of Greenwood, and I'm actually developing a very anime inspired project, that is kind of that speaks to that. And is it manga? Is it anime? I know that what I'm developing and what I'm working on, like I can't help but have these anime influences in the storytelling.
yeah,
It's just that's just what I've grown up on,
yeah,
and I realize I'm of a generation. that did grow up with that. And
Yes.
so, whereas before, it was kind of this reserved thing, we
Yeah.
now have an entire, like I said, that is my storytelling aesthetic. And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
I think
Well,
that's it's wonderful to see it done well out in the world as well.
and that's another thing I want to ask you is, are you, how do you feel about just now, just because of the time we're in, now you're getting to see all these different kind of stories and ideas,
Yeah.
from creators, whether it's Latino or Asian or African or African American, these rich stories that they've been wanting to tell and get out there
Yes.
for so long.
I mean, I think, we are also in a time where there's a lot of pushback and a lot of resistance to our these non historically elevated voices being out there. But to me, it's almost like that resistance is actually making it more vibrant within these spaces, because
Yeah.
now, plot twist, we can do this ourselves. We don't need these larger kind of gatekeepy corporations,
Yeah.
basically, that were running the entertainment industry. We don't have to have them. We
Yeah.
have YouTube. We have Vimeo. We have our own social media. We now have all these avenues to create it and use our voice and not have even our voices like policed by these larger institutions. And
Oh yeah.
so, yeah, that independent world, I think that we're still waiting for the other shoe to drop. I think we are starting to see these
Oh,
these stories form and these groups form to create and tell these stories our way and without these regulations
oh
that
yeah.
limited us.
You can see that just in some of the which I'm not gonna get deep into the political stuff, but
Yeah,
the black commentators that were working at major
yeah,
studios that now
oh,
have their
definitely.
own shows on YouTube and can say
Right.
whatever they want, and
Yes.
are saying whatever they want. Stuff you see Don Lemon on. I ain't never seen Don Lemon cuss this much.
Oh yeah. Listen, I mean, look, it's hitting us. It's hitting everybody. Joyanne Reed. I think Joyanne Reed is
Yeah,
doing some
yeah,
really
she
great
is
work.
doing phenomenal. So now you're seeing these creators say, "Screw this, we're going to get our own platform and say and put out what we want."
It's back to the Ralph Bakshi. I can buy an iPad and I can go make a movie by myself, really, if I really put in work and time.
Time, and there
So
are some that have done.
it's happening. I mean, look on YouTube. It is happening.
Yeah,
And there are I was at like the Cal Arts Producer Show last year. So many of those students are like coming out and they're like, okay, we're looking for work. And like at the time there wasn't a whole lot of work. So what I saw there, when those kids get out here and are start making their work, we are going to have some amazing content. And like I'm confident we're going to start seeing that in the next year. Just there will be this burst of it. So yeah, I think people are still waking up to the fact that we don't need to be employed necessarily.
yeah,
But I'm so excited for what this work will look like and what we're going to have in the next year.
yeah. I am too. I'm excited about what creators are going to create, uh, which kind of leads me to my next question as far as the I won't say the elephant in the room, but or the dreaded question, but it is a big thing, AI and how it's touched, if at all, your kind of space in what you do. Has AI been a big impact? Has it impacted what you do specifically, and how have you seen
Uh,
it impact kind of the creators and people that you talk to?
to be honest, I haven't really seen it have the impact that people seem to think, or in a way that's like limited any other creatives. Um, I know that there are again larger companies that have expressed that they are actively using it for they would like to figure out how we can incorporate it to the storyboard process or the production process. I don't see number one. I haven't seen a successful quality full animation by AI yet, and I personally don't feel like the technology is quite there yet to do a full featured and like quality animation, but
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
AI driven. Um, I know there's a lot of experimentation
yeah,
within the industry with the smaller houses that are doing it, and I think that's good. I think that's what we should be doing with it. We should be experimenting. I think we should be very conscious and very careful that we are not en masse killing people's jobs and employment and taking away opportunities. I don't think we should be using AI to do the thinking, to do the human work. Um, I think it just needs to be an asset. It needs to accentuate the work that the artists are creating. And there are a couple of companies out there that are working within that space, working with that mindset and working to be like, how do we preserve the artists and let this be a tool for the artists to even grow and be better at their job.
Yes.
So, but at this point, the short answer is I haven't seen AI really take away anything yet. I don't think it's to the point that it can actually do the work of a human animator. Another example I point out is like a lot of people said, well, storyboards are obviously the easiest way that we can apply AI. It can do the in-betweens and things like that. I do think there's a sensibility that you develop as an animator by doing storyboards and understanding like those little kind of small moments and like the work of that timelessness to do, making sure a blink happens at the right time. There's a human sensibility you really need for that to really, really sink in and really sell. And so I think we're a ways away from AI, replacing a crew or replacing a team of board artists. I could be wrong, but so far I don't think it hasn't really affected the industry the way I think a lot of people think it is.
Interesting. And all of you out there, make sure you chime in on what your thoughts are on AI. I always kind of threw my thoughts in as I look at it as a tool. If you can use it, learn to use it. If not, don't use it. But I was curious, but I will say this though. My prediction is moving forward that I think it's going to cause this revolution of like 2026 and beyond is going to be this year of reality. People want to see what's real because there's too much fake stuff, going around, and you can say and do whatever you want. So I think there's this shift now. And I even heard about a company. I don't know if it was here in the States or if it was abroad, but it was a company that they make their applicants draw a live test to make sure they can draw, when they come in for the interview. So you got a lot of people now, I think, as we get all this AI kind of slop that comes out, I think you're going to get a lot more people that are wanting, and especially with a lot of the AI fakes and stuff like that, you're going to see a lot more people wanting to see that you can do something real or that you can create something real.
And that's, I mean, we've always had, if you're a board artist, you've always had to submit a board test. You've always had, if you're a character designer, you've always had to submit your work. There's usually a test involved in that actual process. And so I think, and like, I
had one, I'm sorry to cut you off, but he was a guest on the show. He actually said he interviewed an artist and they brought in their artwork and it was all AI generated artwork.
Yeah.
He said the artist actually brought in all AI generated artwork and it was trying to pass it off that he could actually do that type of artwork,
Absolutely. Thing. Like you see it, and like, those of us who know, well, we like those of us for the most part, you can spot AI right away. I see it everywhere. I see it in so many spaces, and it is everywhere. There's a lot of people using it, and so I'm shocked that anyone would try and walk in the door and pass that off. But
that's the thing. There's always going to be those, right? I'm really not. Right. That's the thing. I feel like while it's great in some areas, I feel like it gives people this shortcut process. Right. I don't have to be a writer. I can just throw up my thoughts in the ChatGPT and get a script out. I don't have to understand the principles of, storytelling and structure and all that. I just let ChatGPT do it for me or whatever do it for me.
And of course, of course you're going to get that. You're always going to have people who are going to try and take the shortcut. I think it is on us as the professionals to be able to spot it, to find the ways to work around that and understand what quality work is. And one thing to your previous point, one of my mentors, Andrew Burrell, he was, you know, I was speaking to him about how I was struggling with doing digital inking some of my artwork,
Mm,
and he was like, just do traditional inking. And this was for a comic I was working on. He's like, just stick with traditional. He's like, and especially now with AI, because AI can mimic, you know, digital anything at this point. He's like, there will be so much more value to that traditional inking practice and that traditional craft, and people will recognize it. Even if you are digitally inking over your traditional inks, he's like, make sure he's like, keep up that skill and develop that skill because
yep.
it will be appreciated and there will be a place for it as we move forward in this,
Yeah.
you know, AI imagery world. I don't
Yeah.
call it art. I'm deliberately not calling it art because it's not art. To me, art
Yeah.
is created by human hand.
And
But
and I
yes,
find a lot more creators now, especially the ones that are active on social
Mhm.
media, that are
Yes,
pushing their brand. They're posting behind the scenes, making of stuff of their project.
yeah,
So while you see it, they're showing you, oh, which is why I love stop motion. You know, watching behind the scenes stop motion and
yes,
stuff like that. They're showing you the whole process, or they're showing you while they're working in Maya or whatever it is that they created. So they're starting to, and they're finding people are resonating more with those type of videos than, you know, obviously the AI stuff. So that's why I say people are realizing that people really do want to see somebody have a craft and make something and it turn out really cool, you know.
there's an appreciate. Yeah,
Yeah, there's an
there's an
appreciation
appreciation.
for it.
Yeah. And also like that aspiration, right? When people like, you know, like it's why we go to museums and we can marvel at, you know, this thing that is just sitting on a wall, right? But we can sit and look at it and understand the process, time, energy, thought, the humanity behind what went into an oil painting, right? So and I think that will always be something that's going to resonate with people and audiences is that understanding behind that piece and how it was created, that will completely influence what that means. And you know, there will be you know, AI generated work that may resonate with people too. And people, you know, but it's going to be different. Just like, you know, if the way I experience a sculpture versus a certain painting is going to be different. The way I experience different types of art will always be different. So
Yeah.
I think the way people experience that imagery, you know, again, I don't call it art in the same way I talk about, you know, traditional fine art,
Yeah.
but I think there is that potential for it to be done well, and when used as a tool to create imagery, I think there will be things that resonate. But having that understanding and knowing the process is, I think, core to how people receive whatever they're
Yeah.
viewing or experiencing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Uh, Everybody just tuning in. We've been having an amazing conversation. I want to get this up here, but now let me throw this for now. 16, this is a big one. 16 years ago, I wrote and directed a live action short film, Dark Harmony, in the style of anime because I was obsessed. With no animation budget, I had, let me get that back up. I had the DP frame specific shots to mimic anime style cinematography. This just inspired
Yeah.
me to take that old short and see if I can pull it back out of the closet. I'm glad, you know. And that's the thing that, again, that I'm excited about hearing people's just experimentation ideas and when they're doing stuff and just sparks these ideas. Let me try this or let me see how this looks.
Yes.
And that's what, you know, fuels, you know, the creativity and the space to grow.
You know, I feel like that's what kind of marks a successful piece is like if someone comes and tells you like, hey, something you saw made me want to draw. Something you did made me want to go. Something you said made me want to go create. To me, there's no greater compliment because I know that feeling. I know how it is. I know when I watch Akira, there are certain scenes that like I'm going to stop here and I'm going to go draw right now. When the creativity is passed on and you get this chain of creativity,
Yeah,
basically, that is such an exciting concept and idea and feeling and sensation. So I love reading that. And but now keep it up. I think that I would love to see that at some point.
definitely for now. And definitely when you have that ready to go. You got to come on and share it with us. AI is a tool and not a replacement. Agreed. It's a tool. You don't have to. Yeah. Yeah. You didn't have to
and
read
and like that is something I tell people. It's important to stay conscious of that.
it. Yeah.
I think there are a lot of people in powerful positions who are not, who want to they're worried about the bottom line and be like, how can I use AI to make to cut costs? And it's hard for that to happen without replacing some people. And
Yeah.
so I hope we can avoid that. And I hope people go in with the mindset of how do we use this tool to help our artists be greater in what they're
Yeah. Be
creating.
more creative in what they're creating and putting out there. Uh, we talked a lot about skill set today. What do you what do you see as kind of some of the skill sets, or maybe like the top two skill sets that you see a lot of upcoming artists into the industry lacking?
Mm. I would. I don't know if I would necessarily say it's about artists. I think in terms of creators and storytellers,
Creators and
I think
storytellers.
I think something that's really important, especially if you're going in, if you want to do this professionally, having a very keen understanding of storytelling and really understand not only a storytelling, so like that your actual piece makes sense as a story, but how to present it. And one thing I want to work on is kind of like, hey, here's how to pitch and present in general. And this comes from the fact of like a lot of pitches, or when I meet people who, oh my God, I have this great story and da 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 da, and they'll tell me all these things and shout all these things. And I'm like, I have no idea what the story is. And they'll be like, oh, it's cool, but it's kind of like Avatar meets Star Wars. And, there's this character and they do this and this. But I'm like, there's a way there's a way for me to, there's a way to talk about your story that will be impactful and resonate.
Yeah.
Um, I see a lot of pitches that sometimes like,
It's
I can see that there's something here, but it hasn't. But I don't think people are conscious of how they are presenting it to people.
Yeah, you have to be
And
able to sell it in
yeah,
the right way that they can understand
yes,
it and get it, and it hits. Yeah,
yes, and yeah,
I've had a few guests on that they're pitching their own idea. Luis Gonzalez, Luis Gonzalez works for Pixar.
mm,
And he was
yes,
pitching his, they have those shorts. They always,
yes,
do their Pixar shorts. He's saying, it's just a totally different thing when you're pitching a
yes,
story idea and being able to get your idea across quick, that they can get it and understand what you're trying to say,
yes.
the story you're trying to tell, type of thing. So it's not an easy thing to do, an
No,
easy
not
thing
at
to
all.
just walk in to pitch something.
I tell people, I was like, when you pitch, you should think about your favorite show and your favorite episode, and and you should you should talk about your pitch the way you talk about your favorite movie, and you should have that excitement. You should have that thing, because if you're just like, because what, like, also, if this is an actual pitch, you know yeah, if you pitching to me as an executive, my job is like, I'm gonna have to go and pitch that to my boss.
Yeah,
And if you don't excite me and I don't care about your pitch,
yeah.
of course, at the pitch, I'll be like, well, that's a great idea, guys, and great work. I'll usually tell someone, I'm like, hey, here's some things to work on. But if you're expecting to get a show out of this, I need to be as excited about your show as
Yeah,
you are. And
yeah,
so, hey, you need to get into what that exciting and fresh thing is.
yeah,
Um, and and when I say that, I say exciting and fresh, because also just different isn't enough. A lot of people are like, but this is different. I've never seen it before. Sure, it's different, but it has to be different and exciting. It has to be different and compelling. And just because it's different is not enough, especially in this day and age. We've seen so much. We've seen so much high concept. If you come in and tell me, oh, it's like Avatar, but in space, cool.
There's
But
a lot of
When
advertisers.
Avatar dropped, that's different. But when Avatar dropped, there not only have we never seen anything like it before, but it was so exciting. It was exciting. We had this cool character. I wanted to see this story. If you just come and say Avatar in space, and you kind of tell me a story of some Avatar like people in space,
Yeah,
that's not like, I've seen that already, and so it's like, and like I said, it's very hard, but I tell people everything needs to be high concept now. Everything has got to be high concept if it's going to get an inkling of attention. And that is, there's work you have to put in the work for it. It is making sure you're researching what have we been seeing these last few years that is the high concept, what have we been seeing these last years that's been visually compelling? Dune. I think Dune is one of the greatest films we've seen of the last like few years.
The new
Um,
one
Dune, yes, with the villain. Oh
with
gosh, I can't
Timothy
say his last name.
Chalamet.
But Timothy Chalamet one, yes.
Okay, I didn't
Um,
really like that one. I don't know why. And I was just thinking
yeah,
about that too. That
yeah.
one, I mean, it was really cool. I mean, obviously it was more updated than the
The
what you
previous,
call them,
yes. So,
what you call them Doom, but you know,
yeah.
teach his own. Like I said, it's not an easy thing to do.
And I think well. I think so. I think this illustrates a great point, right? You also are you have to be aware of taste when you are pitching. Be aware of taste. Be aware of the taste of the people you're pitching to, and that means again, do the research. What's come out that's similar to what you've done before? What's come out that's been in the same genre you've done like in recent time? What are the things that you are going to evoke, and what can you pick out that is the silver bullet and one of a kind thing in your project that will set it apart and shoot it like skyrocket it beyond what we've seen before. And it has to be that big. Like I tell you, yes, it has to be that big and that new and that fresh. It has to be something that makes people like, I not only have I not seen this before, but I want to see more of it. Those are the things that you are trying to accomplish with your pitch. And I think the key to that, understanding storytelling. Read Save the Cat. Read
Yeah,
Robert
I heard
McKee's story.
that. Yeah, I heard
You
that's
know,
a good book for story development.
and yeah. And what I will say is like, what you'll read in those, that you'll see that there's a formula to tell a good story, but then these, how do you turn that formula on its head, right?
Yeah,
The Quentin Tarantino of it all. Listen, y'all can't tell me that man knows how to make a movie, and he knows how to make exciting movies that are compelling, right? They're not perfect, but I think it's very what he will say. He's like, I didn't go to film school, I went to film. He did his research, and he now has a sensibility and almost a natural ability to take story and twist it and turn it on the head and throw in these details and nuances that will always get our attention and make us and kind of confront our taste,
yeah,
if you
yeah.
will.
And
So,
these
uh,
oddball characters, type of thing. Yeah,
yeah,
that's pretty good.
absolutely.
And you're starting. Like I said, I think as creators start to just take hold of the concept of creating their own original ideas and stories, you're going to start to see more of that.
Mhm.
I mean, you're getting
Yes,
directors now like Jordan Peele. You're getting directors like Ryan Coogler. They're starting to put their own ideas and spins on stories, original stories.
right. And I also think there are perspectives, right? So I think everyone talks about the center scene with the music and like all these different music and like the history. To me, that's only that is a perspective and therefore a scene and something that could have only come from someone with a very specific relationship and understanding of history, art, culture, music. And like how many people were shocked to learn that there were Chinese like beyond first generation Chinese Southerners, right, who were
Yeah.
very much a part of our culture.
Oh
And
yeah.
so that was, like, and a lot of us knew that, but like, you're not going to get Tarantino would not tell that story,
No.
right? And so that was a very specific
Yeah.
perspective and point of view
But
that
you
only
made a
Ryan Coogler really
but
could
you
kind
made
of
a
bring
great
to it.
point. Is he did his homework. He's one of those
Yeah,
ones that really dives into the homework before he puts something in the
yes,
story. Like I said, what caught me, which I didn't know until I
yeah,
started listening to his back thing, and it was kind of the oddball thing that threw me when I watched it, was the Irish aspect. I was like,
uh,
man, kind of threw me, the little jig and that. But when I was watching his behind the scenes and how he was talking about all the different
yeah,
cultures and the influences, I was like, okay,
yeah.
that's why I say
We
it's layers that you just have to sift through and watch through to really get stuff.
Yes. And that's why I say everyone do your homework and do the research. And we do see the examples of when people don't, and we end up with these shows that are just a bunch of appropriation, or we end up with a show about Egypt that has all white characters, right?
Yeah.
You've got to do the research and understand, because also, like, I use that example. Egypt, there was a very specific time that Egypt was predominantly dark skinned
Oh
African
yeah,
people as we understand them,
yeah,
and then there was an influence and an influx of Arab culture at a very specific point in history.
yeah,
So it is important to do the research and be
yeah,
authentic in your storytelling.
yeah,
And I talk about all these things as creators and storytellers, we are synthesizing so much. It is very, very, very difficult to do it. And then to take that and tell a story that is exciting, compelling, and fresh and fun and relevant and all these things, it is very, very hard. And
yeah,
so, but put in the work, do the research because this is
yeah,
a passion. This is what we do. This is like, why would you compromise on what your passion is?
yeah,
But do the footwork, do the work, put in the time and energy that it takes so that you create quality content that is one of a kind because
yeah,
it's in there. And back to your earlier point of now that we have kind of cracked the door open on other identities beyond like traditional ones, black, brown folks telling stories and telling very nuanced stories from our experiences.
yeah.
Um, like that, like it's fantastic. Like there is a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of history and a
Oh
wealth
man,
of
yeah, yeah.
draw on that we haven't seen before.
Have not
So
seen
now
yet.
is the time to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was in, which is something that I've yet to have on my show, and I've been really
Mm.
trying to. But I did notice that I think he's the first Native American that was nominated for an Oscar, a director in there. I can't think of the film, but it's a Native
Oh my God.
American director. And I'm like, I would. That's what I've been trying to get, a Native American in the industry. I have not come
Yes.
across just that type
Yeah.
of, just the wealth of stories, like I said, that are
Yes.
just out there that are just waiting to be told, is why I'm
Yeah.
excited about this time, because creators, they've got the tools now to tell stories. I tell
Yeah.
people I love Tubi. Tubi's another platform that is one of those kind of low barrier entries for creators that can get
Yes.
their original stories out there and have it be seen by millions of people to perfect the
Yes.
storytelling and ideas and things like that. So there's just a lot of platforms out there that you can get, your stuff, your creation out there.
And these things, like to your point, 15 years ago, not just much more difficult, if possible, if not
Yeah.
impossible.
Only to the
So
big
yeah,
boys.
yeah. And I tell within this, a lot of people, again, the state of the world, and people are freaking out, and then, of course, like the entertainment industry is in these spaces. But I'm like, I think there was a transition for me mentally to say, oh wait, I don't have to deal with that. I don't have to deal with that. There are other avenues for me to tell stories,
Yeah.
and I think it's just shifting your mindset and being able to leverage those things is key, and it is happening, and it's happening en masse. And I think
Yeah.
we're going to see that content. So
Oh
keeping an
man.
eye on the tube and the
Yeah.
Roku's and all
Oh
these kind of
man.
smaller channels that are
Yeah,
offering platforms to tell
I had
stories.
this conversation with one of the directors that I got a chance to interview at the Gamescom Film Festival that I do every year. And he has several films on Tubi that I'm kind of currently going through right now. But I was talking to
Yeah.
him about just this kind of thing, or rush for studios to push content directly to streaming now. Do you see that
Yes.
that's the where it's going, as far as content is going to be starting to just stream, because that's how people are consuming it now?
I think there will always be a place for theatrical. I think people, I think there are enough people and enough the like. I think the theater going experience is unique enough for enough that people will still always do that.
Yeah.
Maybe not in the numbers that they did in the '90s, right, or 10 years ago, but I think there will always be a place for that experience.
Hmm.
Um, Streaming is I think we're still in the kind of honeymoon phase of streaming just being so big. Which, and I'm tracing that back to like COVID 2020 when everyone was at home and you
Yeah.
had this boom in streaming. Um, I'm not sure exactly. It's now we're starting to look just like our cable days again, where you have these subscriptions, and there's a lot of talk and a conversation about that. that makes me think there might be some sort of shift that's coming. I don't know what that is or don't know what it looks like. And I could be wrong. But a lot of people are expressing not in the best, like the most positive light. They're like, oh my gosh, it's just like the cable days. We're just going back to streaming. Streaming's just like that. So there's like kind of a fertile ground for some sort of shift to happen, in my opinion. I don't know exactly what that would be. And again,
Yeah.
I could be wrong. It could just be nothing. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's kind
Well,
of my non-answer to your
I
question.
only say that because like when especially like when I look at my data and analytics for like YouTube, the majority of people are watching it from their phone or their
Yes.
iPad.
Yes.
I do have a high number that are watching it from their smart TV, which I'm assuming is YouTube type of thing.
Yes.
So I mean, as far as how people now are using mobile devices to consume and connect with people more so than, like you said, there's always going to be that theater experience. But do you feel like with the fact that we got the devices now that are more on the go, they're more powerful every year, every iteration, that people are now starting, we get our emails, we bank, we buy,
Yeah.
we do everything on the phone type of thing. Do you see more studios, like you said, pushing content to where they're at?
Okay, yeah, like when you put it that way, yes. Especially with what we're seeing is like this growing micro drama kind of scene, right? And so it's these vertical series that are little like bite-sized 1 to 2 minute episodes that are starting to blow up. And so at least in that field, I'm curious to see where that goes, because right now a lot of the content isn't like high quality content, for lack of a better term. But
That.
and I don't know. I also think there will be like I don't want to watch a whole movie on my phone, especially if it's anime or animation. I like the big screen. I like seeing the details of animation.
Yeah.
So while I think there will definitely be a focus and a shift to push things to mobile, I still believe, and again, I could be wrong, and I may just be a boomer about it, but I still think there are people who will want to see, who are going to want a full screen experience, who are going to want to see things bigger, who are going to want to watch their shows on a screen, right?
Yeah, which is a great segue to my next thought as far as like experiential type of things, because you were talking about people wanting to see on the big screen. I haven't gotten out to it yet. I'm going to get out to actually see one when I go back out to Vegas. But the Sphere, these big experiential things now, is that, like you said, kind of in conjunction with the mobile, that people are wanting this experience and be included in this experience now?
I would really have to sit and think about like what the dynamic between those and those connections are. With the Sphere, for example, to me, there's such a financial kind of barrier, accessibility issue there that I don't know how, I don't know how that experience necessarily would translate into like the smaller, like personal experience. But to that end, I think of things like the Sphere or the Meow Wolf kind of projects that are going on, that are these more real world kind of tactile experiences that you would actually
bringing it down to say like AR or VR type of experiences, type of thing.
My first answer is I don't know. It's just for instance, AR hasn't really taken off in the way that 5 to 10 years ago people are like, this is going to be everywhere. This is going to be the thing. This is going to be a new way for people to experience. I haven't seen that quite happen yet, and that could just be me not looking. I do expect that people will want some more kind of experiential, immersive things moving forward. I don't know exactly the nature of that or what that might look like, the texture of it, really, to really speak on this.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I because I do more AR design. I do some AR design, but I do feel like AR is a little further ahead as far as just accessibility, everyday accessibility, than VR. because the technology, they got these big VR headsets. Everybody's got a smartphone that can access a barcode and can read a barcode, so they can experience an
Yeah.
AR experience in that sense. So I feel
Yeah.
like that's a little more accessible as far as how brands or creators or even businesses can use interactive experience,
Yes. See
without the
that for sure.
full interactive experience type of thing. So you're going to see a lot of mixed reality type of thing. I always
Yeah.
say, I don't know if it's going to get to like Minority Report style type of stuff
Right.
where,
I
it's
hope not.
reading it.
So, yeah,
But when
but
you think
yeah,
about it, though, with what's going on, and I got to ask you, because I had this
yes,
conversation with another creative, because we were talking about the Adobe Animate. I don't know if you just,
yes,
saw
they're
that
cutting it.
fiasco. They
Yeah.
pedaled back and brought it back. I have a feeling, though, that they are going to end up axing it. But my
Yeah.
thing is, as far as like, these big, and everybody's paying subscription, everybody's getting tired of subscriptions type of thing. Do you see that? Where do you see for the creative in this space where there's a few companies that have big monopolies on,
Yes.
the industry?
I would like, for like in that regard, like I personally have like definitely kind of sought out what are the smaller, kind of more independent kind of folks who are creating the software and these tools.
But does that work when
I
they're not industry standard tools, though? It's hard for a
Right,
creative to switch unless they're,
right. Absolutely. Well, and so to me, it's like it goes back to like we are seeing. I do expect to see a kind of a rise in kind of these independent creations and creators, but I'm always wary anytime there's a monopoly or large corporations involved. That always makes you a little nervous because an example I'd use the subscription services. People are probably getting frustrated, but like what choice do we have? There isn't really an alternative that will be robust enough for us to do that professional work. And so our back is kind of to the wall in a lot of cases, right? Like you just got you if you are going to be working professionally in the industry, you're probably going to want to have Adobe software because that's what everything's going to be compatible with, and and that's the network that things work in. And we just don't have a whole lot of leverage to push back against that
Yeah.
from my perspective at this point.
Yeah. Well, I would say,
Yeah.
and I did say this. I think it works a little differently for the
Mm.
independent creator that has his own clients. They don't care what tools you use; they just want the end
Yeah.
result. But as far
Exactly.
as plugging into a team where they've got Adobe, they're using Creative Cloud, or the client asks specifically, "Oh, I want the PSD files," or "I want an
Yes.
Illustrator file," type of thing. A
Yeah.
creative could probably get away with, "Oh, okay, I don't have to use Maya. I can use Blender. All they care is the
Yeah.
3D animation that I give them in the video. I don't have to use
Yes.
Premiere or After Effects. I can use DaVinci." They don't care, what software. So I think in that sense, creatives have a little or independent creators have a little more advantage as far as the flexibility of the tools that they can use, albeit it
Agreed.
is still hard to switch
Agreed.
because
Right.
Adobe is such a behemoth.
I grew up on Adobe. Like I didn't, I
Yeah.
didn't know there were alternatives to Photoshop until I had to go seek out an alternative Photoshop, and that was after 20 years of using Photoshop.
Yeah. Well, I will say I started. I didn't start on Illustrator. I started on freehand. There was
I
freehand.
remember.
There was
And yeah.
Corel. So there were others. I didn't start on InDesign. I started on Quark. I still have a
Yeah.
copy of Quark Express. So
Yeah.
it's just there were others out there. They just got gobbled up by
Well,
the
a lot of they
Adobe.
got eaten up by Adobe,
By
right?
Adobe, yeah.
Remember Macromedia Flash, which became Animate and is now about to be gone, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. I'm kind of glad but see, I'm glad the community that was a big one. That wasn't like a small app that they were shelving. That's a big
That's
app. That's Flash.
it was
Everybody's still using.
astonishing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very surprising to me when
That one
they were like,
did. Yeah, that was. I
yeah,
was like you. I said, man, that's surprising because that's not a small app that's got like a small user
right.
base. That's a big user base.
like there are professional TV
Professionals, they
shows
are
that,
using it.
yeah. So yeah,
So
that was
yeah,
a
that was a
kind of some
surprising
question
one.
marks for that for me.
That was there. Man, everybody, we've been having an amazing conversation with my man, Neil Wade. Where's my cursor at here? Oh, hold on. Okay, there we go. I want to put this up, Manel. Save the Cat. Yeah, Save the Cat's a good book. I've had several recommendations to read it. They say if you want to really get good on writing and structure and stuff like that, read Save the Cat.
Yes, I think it's a great foundation, and I say that to people, definitely worth the read. It's not, but just to understand the storytelling, and then it's up to you. Like, how can you use that or twist that or make it on that to make it grow? But understanding what makes a good story work and what makes story work is so key. And I see some like shows that I watch now or movies that I watch now. I'm like, somebody needs to work on like the story and the structure, understanding about how to earn certain moments, certain emotional moments. For example, that's something I see a lot where a character will just have this emotional outburst. And I'm like, that doesn't make sense. That's not the person you've given me for the last 48 minutes. And now all of a sudden in minute 49, they burst out in tears. I'm like, you haven't earned that. You haven't made it mean anything to me yet. So having that understanding of storytelling, which includes the characterization, structure, all those things, I think understanding that is fundamental to working in this field. And that's something I see lacking in a lot of work and projects that come out these days.
Yeah. Man, oh man, we are hour and a half into this, having an amazing conversation. And as we kind of close out here, I want to ask you a couple more questions. One, through your journey so far to this point, what's been kind of the best piece of advice somebody's given you that's really kind of helped you?
Ooh.
That you kind of that you tend to fall back on or tend to bring up when, the situation calls for?
I would say trust your experience and trust my own experience. There was one point in my career where I was working on a show and I kind of, without getting too much, there was a manager and like they kind of got in my head a little bit. And, on the one hand, they were like, hey, I want to help you grow. I want to help you learn. And so I really leaned on them a lot to, and how it's moving. But then there was a lot of criticism of, oh, well, you didn't do this. Oh, Neil, this. And then it started turning into like, well, you're not good at this and you don't do this well. And I started believing it when once I was out of that situation, I was like, wait a minute, what am I talking about? I've been doing this at that point. I've been doing this for 10 years. I was like, why? Like, I know I'm good at X, Y, Z. I know I'm good at communication. I know what I'm good at. And I had allowed myself to just kind of lose sight in this person that was aspirational, was my boss, that I did look up to. And so I tell people, like, if it takes you sitting down and writing a list, write out the things you're good at. Write out the things that are your strength. Write out things and if you can't think of that, write out things that you want to be good at, and then put in the work to understand how to be good at it. But just really trust your experience. One thing I tell people is like, if you have a job, when you walk in that first day, you have that job because of everything you did before that. And so it can feel a lot like you're in this new space and you have so much to learn and it feels a lot like about what you don't know.
Yeah.
Do not lose track of what you know and what you brought to the table and what got you hired in the first place.
Yeah.
Or if it's not a job or whatever it is you're doing, don't forget that you have an entire history that made you desirable for this role. That made you the solution to their problem. And so just always trust your experience, trust what you know, trust your strengths. And if there's something that you do feel you're weak in, okay, great. We all have things to work on. Put in the work and work on it.
Yeah. Well, before I respond to that, you know how I like to do when my guests bombs. That was a bomb there. So I have to do a bomb when my guests drop bombs. But I want to kind of answer or respond to that in the fact that, I mean, that's great, but obviously when a person gets into Pixar, they're like, wow, this is Pixar. I never thought I'd get into Pixar. And they're sitting next to people that have worked on Toy Story and all the films that they idolize and love. And like you said, they're just trying their best to not to feel like, wow, they're going to discover I don't belong here, type of Pixar. Is that, that's a hard thing to kind of go, especially just kind of getting into it,
It's that imposter syndrome, which is very real, right? But I'm like, that is when you start talk to that. Imposter syndrome is not who you are. Imposter syndrome is what I like to say is a passing cloud. So let that voice kind of come in and talk back to it. Talk back to it if you have to, and say, you know what, I understand that, because imposter syndrome comes from a sense of protection and protecting your ego, right, and protecting yourself and not wanting to fail and all these things. But and so and there are cases where that sensation or whatever the source of that is has been there to be helpful. But when you walk into a new place, I compare it to when I was at DreamWorks, and one of the storyboard artists had worked on the Prince. He'd been on the Prince of Egypt, which is one of my favorite films of all time. And he was like, "Oh my god, like don't let me say this guy's going to think I'm such an idiot." And I was like, "No, actually, what an opportunity! How wonderful it is! I get to work with this person who has worked on one of my favorite films. Oh gosh, in my internship, one of the directors, she'd been an artist on Akira." And I was like, "Oh my god, what do I talk?" No, what an opportunity, And so, all this to say, if you get that job at Pixar and you walk in and you're next to your idol, I lean into gratitude. Find out how grateful you should be, how wonderful it is. I now have the opportunity to work next to this person I look up to and learn from them, perhaps. And they might be, listen, what if they're a jerk? Hey, it's still wonderful. You earned this position. You earned this space next to this person. And so lean into that. If the imposter syndrome comes in, it's like, am I good enough? All this. Tell them, like, oh yeah, I'm good enough. Even if you don't say it until you believe it. Write it on a Post-it and put it on your screen and say it until you believe it, and behave that way until you believe it. But talk back to that inner voice that's trying to shut you down. Talk back, because that is not you. That is just a voice. And you can talk to it. You can tell it to move on. Like I said, passing cloud, let it pass and go on about its business, and you go and get your work done.
Oh, my camera just went there. Or hold on.
Oh, okay. No worries.
I know
Hey, this is live content, live TV, live production.
I tell my audience all the time, what happens live happens live. I roll. And fortunately enough, that's why I love my audience, because they are a very forgiving audience, and they've rolled with me. Heck, for 6 years, y'all know, I've had way worse stuff happen to this. For sure.
Yeah, all right, this is nothing.
This is minor stuff. This is minor stuff. But no, but again, before I do let it go, I have to drop another bomb, because Neil's dropping some bombs here that you guys definitely need to go back and check out if you haven't. If you're just now coming in, Dre. Yeah, small hiccup there, Dre. Just a small one, but you know how we do it. Nothing's gonna stop. Nothing's gonna stop this show.
Right.
Like I said, heck or high water, I am here 3 p.m. every Saturday afternoon, regardless. I'm going to be here. So I thank you, my viewers, for always supporting me on that. Like I said, this has been an amazing, amazing episode. Always fun. Like I said, season 6 is, it's rolling along great here. Definitely make sure that you connect with my guest Neil and my man Neil. Check him out on LinkedIn, on Instagram. Check out his work. You can find him there. definitely you want to get connected with him for sure because he drops a lot of great gems on his videos that he
Thank
drops. So
you.
you definitely want to check him out and connect with him. All this stuff will be on the show notes once it's up on the playlist. So you definitely want to make sure that you check out
Yes.
the show notes and get all the links to the stuff that we talked about today. This has been a great episode, Neil. I cannot thank you enough. And I appreciate you
Oh,
sticking with me through all of this stuff, you know.
oh man, thank you for having me. Thank you for bearing with my running around and all that. This has been great, and I've been looking forward to this. It's been everything I expected and more. So thank you.
No,
To
like I told
everyone
you,
watching, yes.
like I told you, you are part of the Color of Motion family now, and anything that you do, this is the platform is open for you to come on and share, and I want you to share, you know, the things that you're working on, your knowledge, the skill sets that you're learning as you're going along. I want you to share them with our audience and our viewers there, and they want you to come back for sure.
I will definitely. I'm got a lot of exciting things coming up, and yes, Don, I want to reiterate, I love what you're doing, making sure that, yeah, like I said, stories come in all shades, and like this is it. This is how we make sure people know that all our stories are getting told.
All of it. I appreciate. I so appreciate that deal. If you could hang out in the green room for a second while I close out the show, that way I can talk to you afterwards. But everybody, again, help me thank Neil Wade for coming on and sharing such an amazing conversation. Hang out for just a second, Neil, while I close this out. I appreciate it for sure. Man, oh man, this has been another amazing episode. I always say, man, you don't get any better than this. I love what I do, and I love the people that I connect with, and I love you, the viewers. And like I said, season 6 is just, man, it's on fire. And it's not gonna stop next. You know, it's not going to stop. Next week is no exception. And like I was just telling Neil, I always love when family members come back. And next week, man, we got another one coming back. Esther Gabadamosi is coming back. Stop motion animator from Nigeria. Super talented. I'm super excited about her coming back on the show because she's got her and her company, Radiosity Media, have a great new product, armature that she's going to talk about on the show. So I'm just looking forward to Esther coming back and having another fun conversation with her. You know, that's how we do it here on The Color of Motion, for sure. Again, thank you for giving me a little bit of your time this Saturday. I always do. Like I said, I know you don't have to, but I always appreciate my loyal viewers for company stopping by and sharing a little time with us. Well, this has been a great episode. You have an amazing rest of your Saturday, an amazing rest of your weekend. Have an even more productive week. I will see you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Cheers, everybody.